Welcome into the KSL Sports Front Page NBA Draft Live Show. I'm Ben Anderson from KSLSports.com. Find me on Twitter at Ben's Hoops. That's Sarah Todd. You can find Sarah on Twitter at NBA Sarah. You can read her at Deseret.com, covering the Utah Jazz for the Deseret News. Sarah, thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, no problem. It's been almost semi-normal night for us.
So Sarah's going to be on for the next few picks. Then I'm going to get to Sam Farnsworth, who's on KSL with us at night as a broadcaster. And then we're going to have Kyle Ireland, who's a producer for us at KSLSports.com as well. So should be fun. Jazz picks coming up at 27. We just had Tyrese Maxey go off the board. This is my fake Chuck Todd, John King draft board that I'm trying to fake and go through here just so I can kind of keep up with the picks. But it's been a really surprising draft so far. This has not gone chalk, I think, at all.
No, I think it's both surprising that the order of picks has been really surprising to me, but it's also been surprising that there haven't been as many trades as I thought there was going to be, especially at the top of the draft.
Yeah, I think I'm really surprised by that as well. I thought this was going to be a trade-heavy draft based on the fact that we were uncertain on what the financial numbers were going to look like going into free agency. We were really uncertain with who was going to be available, where guys are going to want to sign. So if you wanted to make a move or if you wanted to land somebody for sure, you were going to make a trade on draft night. And that's not what's happened at all. Detroit's been super active. We've got the trade that just happened between the Clippers, the Nets, and the Pistons. Speaking of Detroit, where Landry Shamet's going to the Nets at 19, which I like. And the Pistons ended up getting Saddiq Bey, who's really slipped in the draft down to number 19. But otherwise, it hasn't been that crazy.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised at that trade you were talking about. You know, it's Shamet to the Nets, Kennard right. to the Clippers.
Right, and then the 19th pick to Detroit.
Right, and so I don't know who's making out good in that trade.
Okay, maybe I'm missing out on this, but all of a sudden people really like Luke Kennard, and I get it. Like, he was fine last year. He had his first kind of good year in the NBA. But he's not a great player. I'm not under all of this. All of my timeline is blowing up. Like, the Clippers got this steal. I'm thinking I might have rather had 19 of all of those options, especially if it ended up being a guy like Saddiq Bey or Tyrese Maxey, who was on the board still, who I would have taken.
Well, that's funny because I think that the Nets probably made out the best because I think Landry Shamet's way more valuable than, whatever Saddiq Bey is going to be, I think.
Sure, and he's long. He can kind of play point guard a little bit, and he's probably one of the best shooters in the NBA still. So I'm with you. I like Shamet as well. I actually don't love it for the Clippers, which is good for the Jazz because I don't want to see the Clippers doing well.
Yeah. Also, I'm shocked that Jalen Smith went 10th and Tyrese Maxey just got taken. It seems, I think I probably had that switched in my mock. At this point, I don't even know how blown up any of my mock was because as soon as the fourth pick came, it was done.
Right. So looking forward to where the Jazz are at 27. Right now, we're going into the 22nd pick. That's the Denver Nuggets. It'll be interesting to see which direction they go. Then the Jazz would have been sitting at the board at 23 had they not made that move with New York. I said a couple of picks ago, Sarah, on Twitter. Again, you can follow us at Ben's Hoops, at NBA Sarah. Tweet at us, ask questions, whatever you want to do. I thought if either Precious Achiuwa from Memphis or Tyrese Maxey were on the board at 23, the Jazz might have made a mistake. Neither of those guys are there. I don't see anyone on the board right now that, had the Jazz been sitting there at 23, I wouldn't have preferred them trading back down to 27. I think right now, from my perspective, it looks like a good move.
Yeah, I think there's still, 5 guys that I really like for the Jazz, at least, that are still available. I think Zeke Naji is going to get taken by Denver at 22.
Was that where he's going? Okay, Naji's interesting. I think the Jazz actually, my gut feeling was the Jazz really kind of liked him and were maybe even targeting him at 27. That's just a guess. But kind of the way he'd worked out, what he does spreading the floor as a big guy, he kind of started to seem like a fit to me.
Yeah, and he's really uber confident, and you got to like that in the guy that's coming in. And, I think we talked about it in the podcast yesterday. I like a guy who's going to yell in someone's face and sort of show an attitude, but not in the off the court way. And Naji seems like that kind of a guy.
And super productive. I honestly didn't love his game at Arizona. The times I've watched him, I wasn't in love with him. But I get it. Soft touch, super athletic, dunks easily. is a horrible defensive player, which I'm scared of big guys who can't play defense. But then I think, like, you know what? The Jazz would play Kelly Olynyk. Like, Kelly Olynyk would be the Jazz third big right now, and maybe that's who Zeke Nnaji is if he can step out and prove he can shoot the three.
Yeah, and that's the thing also is they don't have anything in the front court that can space the floor.
Right.
And so it's a need. It's an area where they don't have a player.
So it makes sense. I get what Denver's doing there. It's not a terrific pick. I mean, I think Nnaji would have been fine at 27, 28, 29. And again, I think that's why the Jazz made this trade. Like, I don't think there's anyone sitting there right now at 23 that you feel like you just couldn't have missed out on. There's just not a guy who you're really kind of, throwing your head down because the Jazz didn't draft him. There's certainly good players left. I put up my big board at KSLSports.com earlier this week.
Tyler Bay?
What was that?
Tyler Bay's still available.
Yeah, Tyler Bay, and that's our guy, and I actually think he's going to be available at 27 for the Jazz, and I'm starting to really think that's why the Jazz moved back to target him. I could be wrong, but looking at my three guys who are in my top 10 that are still on the board, Trey Jones from Duke, Cassius Winston from Michigan State, and Tyler Bay. But if the Jazz take Tyler Bay, I think Jazz fans should be thrilled.
Absolutely. I think, and for me right now, it's Tyler Bay, Desmond Bane, and Robert Woodard. That's for me sort of the guys that bottom of the first round that I would think would still be there and that would all be good fits for the Jazz. Bane a little bit less than the others, but still. You get a 44% shooter. It's not terrible.
No, and he can come in and play right away.
Yeah.
I don't think he's the great defensive player that a lot of Jazz fans kind of thought he was going to be. I still think he's going to be a fine player, but I don't think he's kind of the 3-and-D that he's gotten billed as. But I think that's fine. I mean, I don't think you're getting a perfect player when you're drafting at 23 or drafting at 27. When you heard the news this morning that the Jazz were moving back, what was your initial thought?
It makes sense. I mean, 23 is a spot where if you're in, if you're at 23 or 29, like you're still going to be in the same like range of player, I think. And for them to be able to move back and basically get 2 for 1, because Ante Tomic, that's not real, So you gave up something not real for to get 2 picks basically, and then they can swing twice, or they can package the second rounder to try to get off of, I don't know, Ed Davis if they need to.
Sure. I don't know if you have to package a second rounder to get rid of.
I don't think you have to packages, but like if it's just not coming together and you really don't want that on the books, like you could throw that.
Yeah, and even then, you know what? I don't hate Ed Davis at $5 million unless you're absolutely convinced he can't play next year. But he looked okay in his 8 minutes that he played in the bubble. That maybe he
got hurt
and turn it into something. Maybe it was just a comfort area and he just was not quite ready to go. We got a question coming in from Nate. He says, "Are you surprised Tyler Bay is still on the board?" And let me open this up a little broader, Sarah. Is there anyone right now at 23 where the Jazz would be drafting? The Knicks are up right now. Is there anyone you're surprised is on the board or that you regret moving the pick for now that they're sitting there?
I mean, there's honestly no.
I'm with you. I don't feel like there is. There's nobody on the board that I think, man, the Jazz really blew it because this perfect player slipped to them. I think they're in a much better place now to have a good player slip to them at 27 in 4 picks.
Yeah, I mean, think about the guys that are still. I mean, we're talking Tyler Bay, Desmond Bane, Malachi Flynn, Tyrell Terry, Leandro Bomara, although he's going to be a stash guy.
Teo Maladon.
Yeah, Robert Woodard.
Right. There's a lot of names out there. I mean, there's a lot of guys that were talked about at 23 that are still going to be there at 27. I don't think the Jazz are losing significant value with this trade. And then whatever happens at 38 seems like an extra to me.
Yeah. And by the way, Paul Reed.
You like Paul Reed. He might be there at 38.
You
probably knew the guy at 38.
I know.
Targeting. My gut, and I tweeted this out again, you can ask us questions on Twitter. You can also put them right here in the chat if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on Periscope, however you're doing it. My gut feeling was the Jazz were going to go with a perimeter wing or a big man. And the big man I was thinking was Zeke Nnaji. He's gone now. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking they're going to take a wing in my opinion. And that's going to be Tyler Bay or Robert Woodard or Jaden McDaniels, assuming they're sitting there at number 27. And then I think they're going for a guard because I really think there's a lot of smoke with the Derek Favors stuff. We just saw that the New Orleans Pelicans were rumored to be chasing after Aaron Baines now. I know that rumor just came down from Kevin O'Connor in the Ringer because Phoenix chose Jalen Smith, which was maybe the surprise pick of the night as far as a guy who really climbed up draft boards at number 10. Though Phoenix kind of does that. They're not afraid to take a guy kind of way out of their draft range if they like him, which I think that's admirable. It's not the pick I would have made, but if you like a guy, go get him.
And like if the right deals weren't coming in and you like a guy, like who cares? Just take the guy you like if the deal wasn't there.
Is there a guy, and this is dangerous because if the Jazz pick him, we got to walk this back because we have to talk to him. Is there a guy you would think would be a mistake to draft at 27 that kind of is in the conversation?
Yeah, it sucks because as the fellow Aztec, I just don't think that Malachi Flynn, he's too small. And like, even at point guard, I think that the Jazz need more length.
Here's my problem with Malachi Flynn. And I really like him because as I said, his shooting percentages don't pass the eye test, and it's the opposite of Royce O'Neal. Like you look at Royce O'Neal and he's got all these awesome shooting percentages, and I've never seen him hit a 3-point shot in my life. No. But Malachi Flynn doesn't seem like he ever misses, but then you look at his percentages and it's like 37% from three, and he looks like he's at 45%.
Well, part of the thing with Flynn is that he hits very timely threes, which is actually a really good trait to have as a basketball player. It's like when you need to knock it down, you do.
And a good example of that is the Mountain West Conference Championship game. Now, they lost to Utah State, but Malachi Flynn was like 1 of 7 in the first half and then was absolutely unreal in the second half and kind of kept San Diego State in that game after Sam Merrill took over. But the guy I would look at who I would be disappointed, which I'm kind of surprised I've seen his name mentioned as much, is Udoka Azubuike from Kansas, just because he's like a 7-foot tall, 270-pound big man who doesn't step out and shoot the floor or spread the floor. He's a 44% free throw shooter. Like if that was a 3-point shooter, okay, I'm interested. But free throw shooter, like he has no chance of spreading the floor at any point. That's too bizarre to me.
Yeah, well, I saw that name mentioned earlier too, and I thought, why? Like it just doesn't make sense. So I'd be very surprised if they didn't take some sort of a wing or guard or combo of both with their picks, unless they end up doing something else. Who are the Knicks?
Looks like the Knicks, according to Twitter, are going to be taking Leandro Bolmaro. Now, Adam Silver just announced it. He's the draft and stash. He's he's like a crazy high skill, ball in hand, 2-3, and he's kind of got great size, 6'5", 6'6", can do a lot. He can't shoot at all. I mean, he might be he's the worst non-center shooter maybe in like the last 3 drafts. Like he cannot put the ball in the basket at all.
But his playmaking is insane.
It's unbelievable. Right. It's as good as it gets.
What kind of an 800 number calls you at night?
You're getting spam called. So here's the thing. If you're the Jazz, you don't care that Leandro Bolmaro went at 23.
Nope.
Like I don't think you regret that pick at all. I don't think the Jazz had any interest in him. I don't think that was a player they felt like they had to move up and get. It's actually really weird to me that the Knicks felt like they had to move up and get him. Right? Like that doesn't make any sense. The Knicks didn't get benefit out of that.
I guess because there were a lot of rumors that the Celtics were going to be going after him with one of their picks. I know that they had a few. And
they have the 26th pick, which would have been right before.
26 and 30.
And they would have had 26 right before the Knicks were scheduled to pick at 27. So maybe that's your logic, but trading up for a draft and stash is a really weird call to me. That seems kind of like they panicked because a guy they thought would be there isn't.
And like, why are the Knicks like draft and stashing in the first place? Like they need players.
Right. I'm not sure you necessarily have to go out there and make a move for that type of pick. Looks like the next pick is going to go off the board. I'll write that up. That's going to be RJ Hampton. Actually, I'm kind of happy for the Jazz in that. RJ Hampton, he's fine. He's just a bit of a gamble. And the last time the Jazz took that gamble was Dante Exum. And they are actually kind of surprisingly similar players. And RJ Hampton didn't work out for the Jazz. And actually looks like this pick is going to be going to the Minnesota Timberwolves. So, no, the Knicks are trading Bolmaro to Minnesota for 25 and 33. We're going to have to catch up. I'm going to write this up, Sarah.
Right.
Can you get me caught up on Twitter on what's happening?
All right. Okay. Knicks take Bolmaro.
But I think Bolmaro's going to Minnesota. Is that
New
what
York is trading 23, which is where he was taken,
Okay.
to Minnesota. And New York is getting 25 and 33.
That makes sense because Oklahoma City traded that pick to Minnesota earlier in the Ricky Rubio trade, which is really crazy because now he's on the move again for the second time.
He's gone home. And then New Orleans taking RJ Hampton, 24.
Okay, so the last few picks, just to get everyone updated. If you're following us, we really appreciate you jumping on with us. This is fun for us to do. I know I'm a big draft guy. Sarah, I know you really love the draft as well. Zeke Naji went number 22 to Denver. Minnesota took Leandro Bolmaro. We were confused why the Knicks would trade up and draft a draft and stash guy. Now it makes way more sense.
Yes.
Minnesota gets a guy that they can leave overseas. Well, they have a young player already in Edwards who's coming in. Anthony Edwards, number 1 overall pick. They went with him over LaMelo Ball. I think that makes a lot more sense.
And Minnesota wanting to get the draft and stash before Boston also makes sense too.
Agreed. And then you've got RJ Hampton going to the Pelicans. And I thought the Pelicans should have started their rebuild last year. They didn't. They still got a really good haul for Aaron Hall, or I should say for Drew Holiday. So, I don't think I was right necessarily last year. It's not like they lost value. They actually may have gotten more for him now than they would have gotten in the last
year. RJ Hampton was handed, I think, the Milwaukee hat. And then the little kid, I'm assuming maybe a little brother or something that's sitting next to him, was like, no, that's not the right hat. I handed it back. And then, oh, no.
Now this is on the move again.
Now he's got the Bucks hat on.
So according to Shams from The Athletic, New Orleans is picking RJ Hampton at 24 and trading him to Denver. So Denver's now getting RJ Hampton instead of the Pelicans.
Okay, so that makes sense then. It must have been the New Orleans because somebody grabbed a hat and threw it across the room and yelled at it.
So Denver got Zeke Naji and RJ Hampton. I guess we'll see what if they end up keeping both of those picks or if one of those is on the move. But anyways, a pretty wild night of trades from 21 to 24. Assuming we're keeping up on this, but honestly, I think this is the point where the draft is getting really crazy and maybe smart. The Jazz got out of it a little bit earlier. I didn't have to worry about it.
I think that I'm actually surprised that somebody hasn't taken a swing on Jade McDaniels yet.
I thought there was a chance he was going to do what happened with Cole Anthony.
Right.
Where Cole Anthony went 15 and actually would have made sense to Orlando because Orlando loves long athletic guys. They love length, which is why they took Jonathan Isaac, which is why they've taken Bamba. That's kind of the types of players they generally go after. So I think we're in a kind of a fun area now that we're seeing all these trades go down. The Jazz just kind of started it. They just did it this morning.
Yeah, so early this morning.
Well, Sarah, I appreciate you jumping on. I think I'm going to have Sam Farnsworth from KSL TV jumping on with me now. Good luck the rest of the draft, and we'll be talking to you coming up probably later this week. We'll get ready before the Jazz hit free agency.
All right. I'd expect a shout out if it's Tyler Bay.
Okay. Well, bye. All right. There she was, Sarah Todd. So just to get you updated on the last few picks on what has happened, a bunch of trades gone down. Zeke Naji going to Denver at number 22. Leandro Bolmaro went to Minnesota in a trade with the Knicks. He's going to be a draft and stash player. Then you're going to have RJ Hampton with the Denver Nuggets from the New Orleans Pelicans in that trade. He goes at number 24. And now the Knicks are again on the board, so I appreciate that. I'm waiting to get Sam Farnsworth on with me, so I appreciate that when he jumps on, and I certainly appreciate Sarah and her willingness to jump on with us earlier and give us her breakdown. Again, read her at Deseret.com. You can find her on Twitter at NBA Sarah. New York Knicks are on the board right now. We'll see which direction they go. This is kind of interesting because they traded with the Jazz 27 and 38 to get up to number 23, and then they moved out of number 23 to fall back in this draft. So we'll have to see what they ended up getting for that 23rd overall pick, and I'm trying to track this on Twitter along with you as we do this live. But this is that could end up showing that they made a little bit of a mistake. They ended up finding themselves have some trouble. According to Shams now, and I'll write this down, it looks like Oklahoma City's selecting Emmanuel Quickly. I actually just wrote about Quickly out of Kentucky going to the Knicks at number 25. I wrote about quickly earlier today as one of the players who I thought could potentially be an option for the Jazz at 20 or at 38. I really liked him. He's a high-scoring guard. Let me add him to the board, and then we'll bring Sam in. Sam Farnsworth, thanks for jumping on. I can see you're at the studio. Are you going on the air tonight? Am I taking you away from your actual job?
No, not right now. We're in between shows, so we're good. We were on at 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. Did a little hit with Alex and Scotty on KSL News Radio. Now I'm joining you here on our KSL Sports Facebook page, and excited to talk NBA draft. It's nice. It's kind of weird, right? The November NBA draft. We should be talking about the second or third week of the NBA season by now, but
so I'll tell you
nice
the truth.
To have.
Barclays Center is the single coldest building in North America. Like draft night, because they do it in July or in late June. And of course, it's just sweltering in New York. But they keep it so cold inside. And because they block off like 3/4 of the arena, it gets freezing. Like they cool it like there's going to be 20,000 people in there. And there's like 4,000, 5,000. So it is so ridiculously cold on draft night that you can't wait to leave. And of course, you don't bring a jacket because, like I said, it's 90 degrees with 80% humidity outside in Brooklyn. So it's freezing. So it's actually kind of fitting that it's cold outside. I can open the window.
Yeah, there you go.
Get a feeling like it's the actual draft night.
Get your draft feel. Yeah, no kidding.
But we're getting to the point now in the draft, Sam, where, I mean, I'm losing track of all these picks that have been made. One of the things I had really talked about was the reason I thought it was smart for the Jazz to trade back from 23 to 27 and get a 38th pick is because I thought there was a tier in the draft that went from about 18 to 40. And in between those picks, you could have a team that has a guy ranked 40 be 18 on another person's board or 19 on another person's board. Right. And I think that's what we're seeing right now, where I bet you Emmanuel Quickley was not a first-round pick for a lot of teams, and he goes number 25 overall to the Knicks. Now, I love him. I really like him. I think he can score. I think he's Jordan Clarkson. But he goes in the first round. I think the Jazz added a nice value pick and a guy that maybe they have a first-round grade on. They're going to land at 38.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they basically my opinion on, and I think historically it shows on the difference between a player at 23 and 27 is minimal at best. Right?
Yeah, it's pretty minuscule.
And the Jazz, like you've mentioned already, the Jazz knew that the players that they had positioned on their draft board at 23 would likely be there at 27. So they went and made a deal that Bang gets him another pick and a player that's probably borderline first-round talent at number 38 overall. So you're looking at two players that can come in and hopefully fill positions of need, and at least they're going to be able to compete right away to contribute on a Jazz roster that does have needs this year. And so I'm excited to see what they do here. There's a couple of players that I've got my eyes on that I know I've seen on your big board that you did, Ben. I personally would like to see them kind of go towards a big here. And I think if just basing off of what I see on your board, I think you're leaning more towards a guard maybe.
Yeah, I think so. The guys I really like in this draft, and here's the thing, the guys I've got, the next two players on my big board, I think there's a realistic enough chance that they're going to be there at 38 that you probably allow them to slip past you and go for a guy who fills a little bit more of a need. So here's who I have left. And we're picking 26 right now with Boston. The Jazz will be up after this. I've got Trey Jones, Cassius Winston, and Tyler Bay still on the board. Jazz are going to get – I mean, I had Trey Jones number 4 as my guys that were kind of realistic when the Jazz were picking at 23 as a good hope. So he's still there. I love Cassius Winston, but I bet you he's available when you get down to 38. Later. That wouldn't surprise me at all. And then Tyler Bay, who I love out of Colorado, who I actually think I could see stepping in and potentially starting games for the Utah Jazz, playing the 3 with Royce O'Neal and Joe Ingles coming off the bench if you wanted him to, because he just doesn't need touches at all to be effective. And when you have Conley, Donovan Mitchell, Bojan Bogdanovic, Rudy Gobert, like you don't need another guy who needs touches to be good on the basketball court.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, we were talking about that a little earlier with Alex and Scott, that the Jazz have a lot of players that kind of need touches, right? That fit into the system. And Tyler Bay, I agree with you there. That's a guy that could come in and can contribute without needing all the touches. And one thing I like about him is he's got that long wingspan, right? He's got the long arms. And whenever I see that or see that people are praising that, I think of, okay, this is a guy that can come in and be a good defender. And I don't know that Tyler Bay may not be the defender that a lot of people say he is, but it gives me hope that, okay, this is an area the Jazz need a guy who's got longer arms, can be a better perimeter defender than maybe what we've seen. I think Tyler Bay could fill that need. For me, I like not to step on your toes or anything.
No, you're good.
I like Jaden McDaniels too. I know he's a big that. Maybe that's not the most pressing position of need, but I think that was one of the most glaring areas on the Jazz last year was when Rudy was out, there really wasn't anyone you could rely on in that 5 spot, or it was inconsistent. And I'm not saying Jaden McDaniels would be able to come in day one and be that guy, but man, that would be a good 6'10", a guy with a long reach that you would hope would be able to fill. Be very similar to what Rudy is. Not the exact same guy, obviously, but someone who could block shots.
Sure, he comes over as that weak side shot blocker. He comes over as an out defender, where the Jazz really lacked length, and they needed it. It looks like Boston's pick is in. Another major surprise. That's going to be Peyton Pritchard, who I had as another option for the Jazz at 38, out of Oregon, a senior. But the rumors over the last couple of days has been that he had a first-round promise. It certainly seems like that's the case now as he gets picked, number 26. So, Sam, I'm looking at the Jazz board right now as they come up at number 27. They've got Trey Jones, Cassius Winston, but for Jazz fans, you got your pick between who I think Jazz fans really like more than above probably Trey Jones and Cassius Winston, Tyler Bay, Terrell Terry, Desmond Bane, Theo Maledon, Jaden McDaniels, like Robert Woodard. This is a dream draft board for the Jazz. I imagine they're feeling very good about the fact that they traded down right now with the chance to get this pick.
I agree 100%. The difficult choice now is to decide, okay, who, obviously they've got their draft board. So if they stay true to their board, which is what you hear a lot of GMs and coaches say, we're going to stay true to our board, then they're going to take the highest guy that's on whatever board they've put together. But I think there's got to be a little bit of thinking here, kind of what you were talking about before as well. Which one of these players are we looking at here? Do we feel could still be there at 38? Because like you said, this pick Pritchard that just came off the board is a guy that you thought might be there at about 38. Well, suddenly he's gone at 26. So that means a player that's in the 26, 27 range that the Jazz thought that highly of could be there at 38 as well. So now they've got to do some of that thinking as well as they're hashing out this pick.
Yeah, and what's interesting is I don't think the Jazz would hesitate to draft two guys at the same position. Like, let's say they draft Tyler Bay here, and they've got Robert Woodard ranked at number 28, and they go down further. They could still go and pick that guy at 38 if he's available. Wow, the Jazz with the number 27 pick just comes down from Sham Charania, are taking Udoka Azubuike out of Kansas. I just talked about this with Sarah when she was on. This is one of the few picks I just absolutely didn't get at all as for the Jazz if he was the option. 7 feet tall, a shot blocker. He kind of comes in and is a good backup for Rudy Gobert. But you look at the players that are still on the board, I don't know if a backup center is the guy that you need right now.
No. See, and even though I was just talking about Jaden McDaniels as potentially that guy, I saw Jaden McDaniels as a little more a potential, the potential of possibly doing something in the paint on offense as well. I don't know a ton about Azubuike, but I look at him as there's going to be a lot of I don't want to say development, but it's maybe a little bit of a project as well. I don't know how quickly he steps in, and maybe you've got a different opinion than I do on that. But man, I didn't see that pick either.
And it's kind of one of the weird names that's been mentioned with the Jazz, and it's been enough of an outlier that I guess it makes sense that they picked him, that it's been available. But man, I just do not get a throwback center.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I'm honestly very surprised by the Jazz. Now, he was the Big 12 Player of the Year, averaged a double-double. He's a freakish defensive player. At his size, he's got an absolutely incredible vertical leap. He set a record at the combine. I mean, if you can get him in shape, and kind of the rumor has been in his workouts that he's gotten in incredible shape, I get the value there. And if you think you're drafting a guy to potentially replace Rudy Gobert eventually, then this really starts to make sense. But you've already got Tony Bradley. You've already got Juwan Morgan. You've got Terrell Brantley. And, of course, you have one of the 3 or 4 best centers in the NBA in Rudy Gobert. So I don't really get this pick.
So let me ask you a question, Ben, because as you were talking, I was thinking, and you brought up Tony Bradley's name a little bit. As I'm looking at this pick, maybe is it the Jazz are seeing him? Okay, he's better than what we already have behind Gobert? Is he better than Bradley and Ed Davis, obviously?
Well, let me interrupt you, Sam, because it sounds like from Woj now the Jazz are trading Tony Bradley and the 38th pick to the Pistons for future draft considerations. So there's a chance the Jazz draft night is done now, and they end up with Azubuike coming out of here, and kind of just like a pretty unremarkable night for the Jazz, in my opinion. This is just kind of vanilla compared to what I thought were some of the most exciting options on the board for the Jazz.
This is really interesting. I mean, and I like the way you stated that, because at the beginning of the day, when they made the draft to acquire the second pick, when they made the trade to acquire the second pick, I felt like this draft day just got that much more exciting. Like, wow, okay, here we go. The Jazz are looking at making this draft day a serious one. And yeah, I guess you're right. It looks like, unless they somehow wheel some other deal to get another pick somewhere along the road, it looks like their draft night might be done with Azubuike as their only selection at center, a 7-footer. That, and if that's the case, you would think that they're probably looking at him to be a pretty quick contributor to the roster as well. Interesting. Tony Bradley gone, so that answers the question that I was asking you. I think right there, the Jazz see Azubuike as a better, more reliable, backup for Gobert than what they got out of Tony Bradley this last year. An upgrade, I guess.
I'm just surprised, honestly. This is a very surprising pick. I get it if you wanted to have better rim protection. I'm sorry, my dogs are barking. So right. I'm the door, of course, right as the Jazz pick. That's always
excited about the draft.
But looking at how this is happening for the Utah Jazz right now, it's a bit of a disappointing pick if I'm a Jazz fan, in all honesty. It's just not the guy who has the upside potential to step in and fill an area of need. Now, backup center is an area of need, don't get me wrong, but the Jazz needed a guy who could space the floor in the front court, and I just don't think Azubuike does that in a way they would like. He doesn't miss shots at the rim. He led college basketball in shooting last year. He's a rim protector. It's just not a lot for me. And then you traded the 38th pick, which I thought could have been interesting as well.
Well, Azubuike, if they liked him that much, I mean, I don't know. Would he have still potentially been there at number 38? I kind of feel like there's a good chance he would have been. And now I'm looking at the board, and you still see some of these names that you already mentioned, Tyler Bain, Robert Woodard, or Cassius Winston, Trey Jones. You still see these names on the board, and it may leave Jazz fans wondering a little bit, what if they would have gone a different direction? What if they would have gone with one of these guys instead? But again, once you get this far into the draft, it can be a little bit of a crapshoot either way anyway. Most of the players taken in the late first round and into the second round, it's really kind of a 50-50 on who's going to last longer than 4 or 5 years in the NBA at this point. And you'd hope that the Jazz have one of those players that's going to be reliable for the long term.
Yeah, it's just, I get it. It fills a guy who's going to probably step in and play right away. Again, he's 22 years old. You need a guy like that. Yeah. They wanted defense off the bench, but man, it seems frustrating if I'm a Jazz fan to watch this, understanding some of the other guys that are on the board that have the upside. And I think Jazz fans are probably going to be disappointed in this. Now, if he comes in and dominates and can play right away and play 15 minutes, or maybe be a replacement for Rudy Gobert, if the Jazz feel like he's going to cost too much in the next few seasons, it's a great pick. But I think it's going to probably be hard to deal with for the next couple of weeks.
It's going to be fun to watch, fun to see how. I mean, the great thing about this is we're looking at, normally we see the draft in July, right? And then we have to wait 3 more months before we even see the regular season begin. And in this situation, we're looking at a month away now, just a little over a month away before we're into the next regular season. So it won't take long before we get a good look at this guy. We won't have to wait that long to find out if the Jazz hit or miss on Azubuike, at least early in his rookie year. So that part excites me, that NBA basketball's just right around the corner still.
So big thanks to everyone who tuned in and watched our draft show tonight on KSL Sports. Sam Farnsworth, Sarah Todd for jumping on. I know it got a little crazy there at the end, of course, with the trades. And then, of course, Azubuike getting traded or drafted. I'm going to start writing about that at KSLSports.com. You'll have my full breakdown there, and you'll get a report coming up tonight on the news with Sam. Thanks for jumping on, Sam.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, Ben.